Welcome. Now, it is the Friday after the last Friday, which means I have some loose ends to tie up. Last Friday, we began Recitatif by Toni Morrison with its introduction by Zadie Smith. And I'm going to continue reading the story, but for those of you who missed last Friday, just a very brief overview. This involves two young girls, Twyla and Roberta, and they have been put in a place called St. Bonaventure, and they are sharing a room. It is a place for children who have problems at home and orphans. It's called St. Bonaventure. And of course, the head of St. Bonaventure is none other than Big Bozo, a woman of to be feared, shall we say, who ran the place. There was also Maggie, who was old and, according to Toni Morrison, sandy-colored and worked in the kitchen, with legs like parentheses. Now, most of the children did not have parents. Twyla and Roberta had mothers, and oh, what mothers they had. I loved the first line of the story. My mother danced all night, and Roberta's was sick. That's why we were taken to St. Bonnie's. Well, so the story starts. This section ends with Twyla and Roberta basically parting ways. One leaves earlier than the other, but they're about to follow forward in their lives. And the whole point of this, I didn't mention to you. One of the girls is African American. The other of the girls is not. And our challenge as readers and listeners is to figure out which was which. And Toni Morrison has thrown you multitudinous curves. You'll never figure it out. I'm still working on it. So, we are about to begin. I was working behind the counter at the Howard Johnson's on the thruway just before Kingston exit. Not a bad job. Kind of a long ride from Newburgh, but okay once I got there. Mine was the second night shift, 11 to 7. Very light until a Greyhound checked in for breakfast around 6:30. At that hour, the sun was all the way clear of the hills beyond the restaurant. Place looked better at night. More like shelter, but I loved it when the sun broke in, even if it did show all the cracks in the vinyl and the speckled floor looked dirty, no matter what the mop boy did. It was August, and a bus crowd was just unloading. They would stand around a long while, going to the John, looking at the gifts and junk for sale machines, reluctant to sit down too soon. Even to eat. I was trying to fill the coffee pots and get them all situated on the electric burners when I saw her. She was sitting in a booth smoking a cigarette with two guys smothered in head and facial hair. Her own hair was so big and wild, well, I could hardly see her face. But the eyes, I would know them anywhere. She had on a powder blue halter and shorts outfit and earrings the size of bracelets. Talk about lipstick and eyebrow pencil. She made the big girls look like nuns. I couldn't get off the counter until 7 o'clock, but I kept watching the booth in case they got up to leave before that. Now, my replacement was on time for a change, so I counted and stacked my receipts as fast as I could and signed off. I walked over to the booths, smiling and wondering if she would remember me, or even if she wanted to remember me. Maybe she didn't want to be reminded of St. Bonnie's or to have anybody know she was ever there. I know I never talked about it to anybody. I put my hands in my apron pocket and leaned against the back of the booth, facing them. Roberta? Roberta Fisk? She looked up. Yeah. Twyla. She squinted for a second and then said, Wow. Do you remember me? Well, sure. Hey, wow. It's been a while, I said, and gave a smile to the two hairy guys. Yeah. Wow. You work here? Yeah, I said. I live in Newburgh. Newburgh. No kidding. She laughed then, a private laugh that included the guys, but only the guys. And they laughed with her. What could I do but laugh too and wonder why I was standing there with my knees showing out from under that uniform? Without looking, I could see the blue and white triangle on my head, my hair shapeless in a net, my ankles thick in white Oxfords. Nothing could have been less sheer than my stockings. There was this silence that came down right after I laughed. A silence. It was her turn to fill up. With introductions, maybe, to her boyfriends, or an invitation to, sit down, have a Coke. Instead, she lit a cigarette off the one she'd just finished and said, we're on our way to the coast. He's got an appointment with Hendricks. She gestured casually toward the boy next to her. Hendricks? Oh, wow. Fantastic, I said. Really fantastic. What's she doing now? Roberta coughed on her cigarette, and the two guys rolled their eyes at the ceiling. Hendricks. Jimi Hendrix, asshole. He's only the biggest. Oh, wow. Well, forget it. I was dismissed without anyone saying goodbye, so I thought I'd do it for her. How's your mother? I asked. Her grin cracked her whole face. She swallowed. Fine, she said. How's yours? Pretty as a picture, I said, and turned away. Back of my knees were damp. Howard Johnson's really was a dump in the sunlight. James is as comfortable as a house slipper. He liked my cooking, and I liked his big, loud family. They'd lived in Newburgh all of their lives and talk about it the way people do who have always known a home. His grandmother is a porch swing older than his father, and when they talk about streets and avenues and buildings, they call them names they no longer have. They still call the A&P Rico's because it stands on property once a mom and pop store owned by Mr. Rico. And they call the new community college Town Hall because it once was. My mother-in-law puts up jelly and cucumbers and buys wrapped butter in cloth from a dairy. James and his father talk about fishing and baseball, and I can see them all together on the Hudson in a raggedy skiff. Half the population of Newburgh is on welfare now. But to my husband's family, it was still some upstate paradise of a time long past. A time of ice houses and vegetable wagons, coal furnaces and children weeding gardens. When our son was born, my mother-in-law gave me the crib blanket that had been hers. But the town, they remembered, had changed. Something quick was in the air. Magnificent old houses, so ruined they had become shelter for squatters and rent risks, were bought and renovated. Smart IBM people moved out of their suburbs back into the city and put shutters up and herb gardens in their backyards. A brochure came in the mail announcing the opening of a food emporium. Gourmet food, it said, and listed items the rich IBM crowd would want. It was located in a new mall at the edge of town, and I drove out to shop there one day. Oh, just to see. It was late in June, after the tulips were gone and the Queen Elizabeth roses were open everywhere. I trailed my cart along the aisle, tossing in smoked oysters and Robert sauce and things I knew would sit in my cupboard for years. Only when I found some Klondike ice cream bars did I feel less guilty about spending James Fireman's salary so foolishly. My father-in-law ate them with the same gusto little Joseph did. Waiting in the checkout line, I heard a voice say, "Twyla!" The classical music piped over the aisles had affected me and the woman leaning toward me, who was dressed to kill, diamonds on her hands, smart white summer dress. "I'm Mrs. Benson," I said. "Oh, the big bozo," she sang. For a split second, I didn't know what she was talking about. She had a bunch of asparagus and 2 cartons of fancy water. "Roberta?" "Right. For heaven's sakes." "Roberta." "Ah, you look great," she said. "Well, so do you. Where are you? Here in Newburgh?" "Oh, yes, over in Annandale." I was opening my mouth to say more when the cashier called my attention to her empty counter. "Oh, I may meet you outside." Roberta pointed her finger and went into the express line. I placed the groceries and kept myself from glancing around to check Roberta's progress. I remembered Howard Johnson's and looking for a chance to speak, only to be greeted with a stingy "Wow." But she was waiting for me, and her huge hair was sleek now, smooth around a small, nicely shaped head. Shoes, dress, everything summery and rich. I was dying to know what happened to her, how she got from Jimi Hendrix to Annandale, a neighborhood full of doctors and IBM executives. Easy, I thought. Everything is so easy for them. They think they own the world. "How long?" I asked her. How long have you been here?" "A year. I got married to a man who lives here. And you're married too, right? Benson, you said." "Yeah, James Benson." "And is he nice?" "Oh, well, is he?" Roberta's eyes were steady, as though she really meant the question and wanted an answer. "Oh, he's wonderful, Roberta. Wonderful." So, you're happy? Very. Well, that's good, she said, nodded her head. I always hoped you'd be happy. Any kids? Oh, no, I know you have kids. One, a boy. How about you? 4. 4? She laughed. Step kids. He's a widower. Oh, you got a minute? Let's have coffee. I thought about the Klondikes melting in the car, and they go on with their meeting and their conversation and catching up with each other and what had happened. And the story continues. The next morning, I went into the garage and cut the side out of a carton of our portable TV had come in. Oh, it wasn't nearly big enough. But after a while, I had a decent sign. Red spray-painted letters on a white background. And so do children. Well, I meant just go down to the school and tack it up somewhere so those cows on the picket line across the street could see it. But when I got there, some 10 or so others had already assembled, protesting the cows across the street. Police permits and everything. I got in line, and we started in time on our side while Roberta's group started on theirs. Now, that first day, we were all dignified, pretending the other side didn't exist. The second day, there was name-calling and finger gestures, but that was about all. People changed signs from time to time, but Roberta never did, and neither did I. Actually, my sign didn't make sense without Roberta's. And so do children what? One of the women on my side asked. Have rights, I said, as though it was obvious. Roberta didn't acknowledge my presence in any way, and I got to thinking maybe she didn't know I was there. I began to pace myself in the line, jostling people 1 minute and lagging behind the next so that Roberta and I could reach the end of our respective lines at the same time, and there would be a moment in our turn when we would face each other. Still, I couldn't tell whether she saw me and knew my sign was for her. The next day I went early, before we were scheduled to assemble. I waited until she got there before I exposed my new creation. As soon as she hoisted her "Mothers have rights too," I began to wave the new one, which said, "How would you know?" I know she saw that one, but I had gotten addicted now. My signs got crazier each day, and the women on my side decided that I was a kook. They couldn't make heads or tails out of my brilliant, screaming posters. I brought and painted a painted sign in queenly red with huge black letters that said, "Is your mother well?" Roberta took her lunch break and didn't come back for the rest of the day or any day thereafter. 2 days later, she stopped going to, and I stopped going to and couldn't have been missed because nobody understood my signs anyway. It's a nasty 6 weeks. Classes were suspended, and Joseph didn't go to anybody's school until October. The children, everybody's children, soon got bored with the extended vacation, and they thought it was going to be so great. They looked at TV until their eyes flattened. I spent a couple of mornings tutoring my son, as the other mothers said we should. Twice I opened a text from last year that he had never turned in. Twice he yawned in my face. Other mothers organized living room sessions so the kids would keep up. None of the kids could concentrate, so they drifted back to The Price is Right and The Brady Bunch. When the school finally opened, there were fights once or twice, and some sirens roared through streets every once in a while. There were a lot of photographers from Albany, and just when ABC was about to send up a news crew, kids settled down like nothing in the world had happened. Joseph hung my "How would you know" sign in his bedroom. I don't know what became of, and so do children. I think my father-in-law cleaned some fish on it. He was always puttering around in our garage. Each of his 5 children lived in Newburgh and acted as though he had 5 extra homes. I couldn't help looking for Roberta when Joseph graduated from high school, but I didn't see her. It didn't trouble me much what she had said to me in the car. I mean, the kicking part. I know I didn't do that. I couldn't do that. But I was puzzled by her telling me Maggie was black. When I thought about it, I actually couldn't be certain. She wasn't pitch black, I knew, or I would have remembered that. What I remember was the kitty hat and the semicircle legs. I tried to reassure myself about the race thing for a long time until it dawned on me that the truth was already there and Roberta knew it. I didn't kick her. I didn't join in with the Gar girls and kick that lady, but I sure did want to. We watched and never tried to help her and never called for help. Maggie was my dancing mother. Deaf, I thought, and dumb. Nobody inside. Nobody who would hear you if you cried in the night. Nobody who could tell you anything important that you could use. Rocking, dancing, swaying as she walked. And when the Gar girls pushed her down and started roughhousing, I knew she wouldn't scream. Couldn't. Just like me. And I was glad about that. We decided not to have a tree because Christmas would be at my mother-in-law's house, so why have a tree at both places? Joseph was at SUNY, New Paltz, and we had to economize, we said. But the last minute, I changed my mind. Nothing could be that bad. So I rushed around looking for a tree, something small but wide. By the time I found a place, it was snowing and very late. I dawdled like it was the most important purchase in the world. The tree man was fed up with me. Finally, I chose one, had it tied to the trunk of the car. I drove away slowly because the sand trucks were not out yet, and the streets could be, murder at the beginning of a snowfall. Downtown, the streets were wide and rather empty except for a cluster of people coming out of the Newburgh Hotel, the one hotel in town that wasn't built out of cardboard and plexiglass. A party, probably. The men, huddled in the snow, were dressed in tails, and the women, they had on furs. Shiny things glittered from underneath their coats. It made me tired to look at them. Tired. On the next corner was a small diner with loops and loops of paper bells in the windows. I stopped the car and went in, just for, a cup of coffee, and 20 minutes apiece before I went home and tried to finish everything before Christmas Eve. Twyla. Twyla? There she was, in a silvery evening gown and dark fur coat. A man and another woman were with her, the man fumbling for change to put in the cigarette machine. The woman was humming and tapping on the counter with her fingernails. They all looked a little bit drunk. Well, it's you. Ah, how are you? I shrugged. Pretty good, frazzled, Christmas and all. Regular, called the woman from the counter. Fine, Roberta called back, and then, hey, wait for me in the car. She slipped into the booth beside me. I have to tell you something, Twyla. I made up my mind if I ever saw you again, I'd tell you. I'd just as soon not hear anything, Roberta. Doesn't matter now anyway. No, she said, not about that. Don't be long, the woman said. She carried 2 regulars to go, and the man peeled his cigarette pack, and they left. It's about St. Bonnie's and Maggie. Oh, please. No, listen to me. I really did think she was black. I didn't make that up. I really thought so. But now I can't be sure. I just remember her as old, so old. And because she couldn't talk, well, I thought she was crazy. She'd been brought up in an institution like my mother was, and like I thought I would be too. And you were right. We didn't kick her. It was the car girls, only them. But, well, I wanted to. I really wanted them to hurt her. I said we did it too, you and me. But that's not true. And I don't want you to carry that around. It was just that I wanted to do it so bad that day. Wanting to is doing it. Her eyes were watery from the drinks she'd had, I guess. I know it's that way with me. 1 glass of wine, and I start bawling over the littlest thing. Hey, we were kids, Roberta. Yeah, I know. Just kids. 8. And lonely. Well, scared, too. She wiped her cheek with the heel of her hand and smiled. Well, that's all I wanted to say. I nodded and couldn't think of any way to fill the silence that went from the diner, past the paper bells, and out into the snow. It was heavy now. I thought I'd better wait for the sand trucks before starting home. Thanks, Roberta. Sure. Did I tell you, my mother, she never did stop dancing? Yes, you told me. And mine? She never did get well. Roberta lifted her hands from the tabletop and covered her face with her palms. When she took them away, she really was crying. Oh, shit, Twyla. Shit. What the hell happened to Maggie? And so ends the story of Recitatif by Toni Morrison. We're going to go to a different place next Friday. We're going to read a story full of vernacular where you will have no trouble figuring out who the African American just might be. It's going to be a story by Zora Neale Hurston. Till then, savor your weekend. And just as a suggestion, you might come and visit us at Story and Song tomorrow, Friday, when another short story writer, Saturday, excuse me, Connor just thankfully corrected me. I'm date challenged. Saturday, when we're going to be reading 4 of Maggie's wonderful stories. There'll be a whole group of people reading the different stories. So, come for some more. Until then.